Hello, my Astro family. This is Lada from astrolada.com with your May 2020 horoscopes. Yay, I'm back, feeling a bit better. And I have invited this month evolutionary astrologer Bryan to help me to lead you through the spiritual and karmic meaning of this month. And I will cover the more practical, mundane day-to-day influence of the month. And Bryan Coulter is the most spectacular astrologer I've seen. The first week we introduced him, he had 500 individual orders, and they have carried on like that ever since. So he broke the record with us, and you'll see why. He's amazing. So I'm very excited to present you the May 2020 horoscopes. And by the way, on May 16th, Bryan is making his first webinar for astrolab.com for our audience, which is only $63 down from $90, on past life astrology, how to read the past lives in your horoscope. And I think it will be our most successful webinar to date as well, because the topic is fascinating. So let's begin. Gemini May 2020. Hello, Bryan. Bryan will show you the evolutionary perspective for this Gemini and the nodes, the internal journey, and what the universe kind of wants from us. Hi.
Hi, Lada. All right. Well, thanks for having me. And thank you, Geminis, for listening in for your May personal horoscope here. And Lada's going to focus on the retrograde planets. I'm just going to focus on what are called the nodes of the moon. Okay. Now, the transiting nodes of the moon, they're always somewhere in our chart. And from my perspective in the style of astrology I practice, known as evolutionary astrology, whether we're looking at the nodes or Mercury or Chiron or whatever, we're always looking for the evolutionary intention. Everything has an evolutionary intention. And the nodes of the moon, as they travel through the sky, represent our collective karma. Now, in our own personal birth charts, they represent our own personal karma. And I actually analyze the nodes of the moon to tell a past life story, which I'll be teaching everybody who is interested how to do that themselves in the upcoming workshop. But now, today, we're looking at the collective karma. And of course, we all have our small part to play within, everybody here in this co-creative process. We call this major learning curve of being born on planet Earth. And the nodes are always somewhere. And for Gemini, they're in the 8th house and the 2nd house. And they're in the sign of Capricorn, Cancer. Now, they're about to shift into Gemini, Sagittarius. That's a whole nother subject. We're about to enter into a major energy shift, which is exciting. I think we've all had enough of Capricorn over the last couple of years. Kind of OD'd on Capricorn.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the breath of fresh air. And that's kind of a good way to describe the fire sign of Sagittarius and Gemini, the air sign. But I'm kind of digressing here. So Capricorn, Cancer, we're kind of finishing up. Okay. So we're finishing up trying to wring out as much evolutionary potential as we finish up this nodal axis, which for you is in South Node in the 8th house, North Node in the 2nd house, as I've been saying. Now, also, as I said, we've OD'd on Capricorn. The reason for that isn't because of the nodes, simply. It's because we've been having a lot of heavy hitters transit through this sign. We've had Pluto. Pluto's still there. Yeah. We've had Saturn. It's in Aquarius now, but it's been through Capricorn the last year and a half. And now we have Jupiter in Capricorn. Yeah, those are some whoppers, and we've all been feeling it. And not only that, but Saturn rules Capricorn. So it gave it another extra jolt of energy. And since it's in your 8th house, this is really charged, because you also have Pluto in its own house of your birth chart, the house it's said to be the ruler of. So Pluto, the so-called god of hell, in the house of death, sex, and the occult, It's kind of a funny name. It's a charged and juicy name. But what death, sex, and the occult have in common are their taboo subjects. And we learn at an early age we shouldn't talk about those subjects. It's a very scorpionic house, which, by the way, is the 8th sign of the zodiac. So huge 8th phase sort of pulse going through your life, really over the last couple of years. And here you are trying to wring out as much potential as you can. So charged emotional material is really the core meaning of the 8th house. It's likely you've been riding the drama llama the last couple of years. Now, house of sex, okay, fine. It's not the house of eroticism. That's more of a 5th house function. It's not the joy of sex. But it's more the mystery of the couple, the mystery that makes couples form. And you've been going through a death and rebirth sequence. This feels like the phoenix diving into the ashes to be reborn. You've been going through, I guess you could say, a mini reincarnation. And I can feel most of you are probably nodding your head along with that. It's like, yeah. It's been a bucking bronco. And it's probably been a bronco in a lot of our own interpersonal relationships, hence the drama llama. Yeah. Not for everybody. It also depends on the rest of your makeup of your chart. We can't help but generalize somewhat here. But I know with a fair degree of certainty that, you know, you've been feeling all these whoppers through this 8th house, which is supercharged by itself, let alone when it's aided and abetted by these other big planets here. Okay. So dealing with your own wounding, the suffering, which we all have, it's part of being human, but the wounding we've endured from childhood especially, that's created wounds in our unconscious mind, which of course come out to play in our close relationships, our deeply bonded relationships. And Capricorn probably in your birth chart rules your 8th house. So when you bond very deeply. You have the chart of a partner, not a lover. Doesn't mean you're not a good lover. It just means, you know, looking at this in a vacuum, if you're a Sagittarius with Aquarius moon, we may be looking at a different picture here. But when you bond deeply, you mean it. It's like you signed a contract in blood. You're in it for the long haul. Something is very deeply fed in you through long-term partnership and relationship. Okay? But those are hard. You know, there's so much we have to forgive in these types of relationships to stay together that long. And it's likely it's been pretty stormy in that area of your life. As you well know, you sleep with somebody for a few weekends in a row, you know, 4 or 6 weekends in a row, your stuff starts to come up. You start to press each other's buttons. A lot of reactionary behavior. But it's all part of your death and rebirth sequence. Everything represents an evolutionary opportunity. Saturn and Pluto in the 8th house typically is not easy. It's stormy, it's turbulent, okay? But it's not because Saturn and Pluto want to be a pain in the butt in your life, you know? It's because they want you to grow in this very personal part of your chart. Now, from the ego's perspective, as our buttons continually get pressed over and over again, that's hard. It's maybe not the best news in the world. It's like, oh, great, I'm sick of this. But from the soul's perspective, since ultimately we're here to learn, you've been positioned to grow rapidly, so much so that you reincarnate as you come up from the ashes. And a lot of this has likely been through your close relationships, as your partners have been acting as a sounding board for your wounded places. And of course, this can have a variety of ways it plays out, all the way from plates and knives flinging across the room, shattering on the kitchen wall, you know, and then all the way to the more constructive methods of digging deep together. You're Gemini rising, you're a good communicator, so maybe open and honest communication as you try to heal together. It's probably felt like, to a certain degree, psychotherapy. And maybe you've needed a little therapy, you know, that can be part of the mix too. But always with the nodes, we want to move beyond them, or always with the south node. We want to move beyond the south node, okay? You've been getting your PhD in turbulent waters, the inner world, which can create a little bit of shakiness, emotionally speaking. Your north node, your karmic medicine, okay, is in the second house, and it's in Cancer. And Cancer is the intention here. Signs are about energetic textures. They're about motivation. The motivation here is to heal. Okay? You've been healing through the death and rebirth sequence, but now through that tiring work, it's time for some R&R in a very specific area of your life, being the second house. So you're leaving the somewhat stormy waters of the subjective world and all the growth you've been enduring, over the last couple of years, into a much more earthy, practical house, being the second house. Trying to get your feet off that dinghy, getting whipped around in the ocean, onto solid ground, onto the sand there. Okay? Having that grounded feeling. The second house is a house of money, very practical, concrete house, the house of survival. Of course, money buys us food, water, and shelter. That's been a lot of focus for many of us. Amazon's been busy, and self-doubt is probably abundant. Doubt for, if we're going to be able to pay the bills, house of money. A lot of us have felt really insecure. And if we're tender emotionally through dealing with all this storminess, that can make us more susceptible to insecurity, as this world is changing around us as we know it. So part of your medicine, Cancer, is to focus on this very practical, real, concrete house of money. Now, the eighth house, another component of it, which you may talk about a lot, I don't know, is the house of shared resources. That might be a stressor too, as we're trying to survive here. Okay. Now, money, obviously, is more in our external environment, very, very important. But the more psycho-spiritual understanding of the second house is it's the house of insecurity. So outward security, inward security, net worth, self-worth. Of course, they affect each other. Yeah. We're all feeling a bit insecure now, or most of us are. Some self-doubt. So we need more resources, is one way you could say that. Okay. Yes, money, that's a resource. Yeah. It's also the house of skill building. If you're got a little tipsy out in Paris, France, okay, out when you're visiting there, and you get lost at 2 a.m. trying to find your hotel and you happen to speak French, you're going to feel a lot more secure about yourself and your situation. It'll go a lot better.
Personal experience there. I'm kidding.
Although with Google Translate, it may be a little easier, unless you're slurring your words, then, you'll really have some trouble. But that's a resource. So you need more resources now to feel more safe, more secure. The accumulation of more resources, skills, tools, alliances, yes, money. Yeah. Now, Cancer, the most sensitive sign in the zodiac, the motivation for Cancer is healing and self-nurturing, yes, but it's also safety and security. So here it is in the house of security of your chart. And the whole goal for feeling more security, okay, is developing this, broadly speaking, resource base, the solid ground, the feet into the sand. Maybe learning some new skills. You're a Gemini rising, you're good at learning. Okay? You can soak it up like a sponge. Maybe learning some new methods of creating an alternative, income stream could be part of it. Some new skill that helps you feel more stable and safe. For example, starting to grow a garden in your house or something like that, or hydroponics or something. That's a Cancer thing. Cancer tends to the needs of beings, whether it's yourself or other people. So tending to the needs of the plants, seeing things grow, the healing quality in that. So the whole goal here is healing by means of feeling more secure within a world that feels very insecure right now, and getting away from any drama, okay, and into this new reincarnated being that you are as you've been doing this healing work, and onto more solid ground. It's like maybe you get one of those grounding blankets that has the silver weave through it, so you can get some of those negative ions. You know, get your feet on the earth. It's a very practical, concrete house. It's a very Taurian house, which I just did a new moon video about. You know, shameless plug if you want to check it out. But the more you do that, the more you grow and evolve as you attempt to reach this north node, which for a lot of us feels very inaccessible. South node's been there, done that. It's easy. This is what we've been immersed in. Let's go towards the north node. Feels a bit more unnatural. It's like brushing your teeth with your left hand if you're right-handed. And the more you do that, the more rapidly you grow, and we can do our own little part within the collective to reach that north node as we wrap up this sign combination of Capricorn, Cancer. So that's the evolutionary intention, with the goal always being to expand our consciousness.
Thank you so much, Bryan. That was so profound. It's almost like this last month grounds is the last opportunity for Geminis to ground themselves in practical reality, to stabilize themselves before the North Node moves into their sign. and
yeah, and then grounding goes right out the window. So totally we're wrapping it up, you know, getting all that last potential.
Yeah, we'll do another video with Bryan maybe for June about the nodes in the new signs, in your sign as well. And I'll focus on the more practical side of this month, which is, you know, outer things, what's happening, the more superficial stuff. But as you can see, there is a lot of retrograde planets. All the ones that I've underlined, they're going retrograde. So we're having Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus going retrograde. And I have a little here, like whatever background that says what retrograde, which means the planet, they start moving backwards. So it's time to return to the past. It's time to, you know, we've been thrown into this brave new world in the last few months when all the planets are moving direct. And because of the intense combinations, obviously. And we didn't have time to really realize what's happening. We had to go there. We had to just go and roll with it. And now when the planets in May, 3 planets that rule half of your life experiences, because there are 12 houses, and those 3 planets rule 12 of those houses, the practical side, the visible 3 planets rule the visible practical side of the 12 areas in our life, 6 of them, basically. So suddenly now you have a chance to slow down a little bit, to integrate what's been happening, to look at it, to question it, to see it from a different perspective, and also to go back, to try at least to go back to how things were before, because retrograde is to restart, to go back, to return to. Restart, not in the sense to totally reinvent yourself. Restart is go back and start doing something you've been doing before. And a lot of the world will be doing that. So it's very correct how the astrology just unfolds and shows the events in the world. And I'll speak about 3 particular areas in your life that you have to fix, correct, rethink, overcome some crisis, put 3 times more efforts. This is what retrograde means according to ancient astrology. And starting with Venus. Venus is going retrograde in your sign. It's a huge deal. The last time it went retrograde in your sign was 8 years ago, Gemini. And I think around 8 years, yeah. It repeats the circle every 8 years. And they often say, when, you know, look back at 8 years, what happened 8 years ago? There might be similar situations now, but never the same. It's like a spiral. It's always a bit somehow similar. Something maybe that started 8 years ago, you can see results now, or you can understand the deeper meaning of it, or it can be wrapped up now as well. I think it's 8 years, please. I hope I'm not wrong. But let's focus on specifically what is going to mean for you the next 40 days from the middle of May to the end of June, Venus being retrograde in Gemini. Well, on the most superficial level, this can mean that you want to reinvent and start rethinking your physical appearance. The most simple thing, the first house, the house where your ascendant is, because these videos are for ascendant, sun, and moon. So for the ascendant in particular, it's your appearance. For the sun and moon as well, it can be. But you're like, well, maybe, I want to reinvent myself, but you don't do it right away. You start questioning first. And you do it usually the best results when Venus goes direct, then you have already a new set appearance and, physical self-expression. You can start questioning your health habits as well. The first house is how you take care of, it's your body. And because Venus is beauty, you might be like, I've always wanted that beautiful toned muscle body, but I've never gone around to it. And the retrograde planet really, because it's so much closer to Earth, you really become strongly aware of it. And you're going to start feeling very strong need to feel more beautiful, to feel more attractive physically as well. So that can be a time when you really start reshaping and changing your mind in regards to your physical appearance, your body. But the first house is your whole self-expression, you as a personality. You might start just questioning yourself and who you are and how you want to present yourself to the world. There can be generally some opportunity from the past that comes back to you, because whether it's your sun or moon or ascendant, the sun usually is more connected to career, with your goals. The moon is usually more connected with your personal life, emotional life, bonding, family. With the ascendant, it's your overall life. Some opportunity from the past can come, so you can restart it and really implant it, really integrate it for the next 40 days into your life, but it will require 3 times more efforts. And the result can be 3 times more lasting once Venus starts moving direct from July onwards. But yes, revisiting and also fixing something that you don't like about yourself. Is it about your appearance? Is it about your personality? Making it more harmonious, more balanced. That's what Venus wants. Making it more likable. And some might even use it to get under people's skins. how to basically gain following by becoming more charming, or integrating those Venusian qualities in a more raw, deeper way. But because it's retrograde, you have to work harder at it. It's first an effort, and by the time Venus starts moving direct, you'd have integrated a bit more pleasant and charming energy and aura and personality around you that you can keep for a long time. It's also about Venus rules your 5th and 12th house, so it can bring to you some, possibly even an old love affair, or rethinking, like Bryan says, the 5th house is eroticism, the eroticism of your relationships, and maybe even having to communicate with your partner about that and wanting to change it and find alternative ways about it, or fix it and make it more sensual, which is Venus, and especially through Geminian ways, maybe through sending sexy pictures to each other, maybe through stimulation, conversation, or watching something together, by getting ideas from other people. And it's also your 5th house that Venus rules you, is your creative abilities, your original thinking, your hobbies, the thing that you really enjoy, that you're natural at, that gives you such joy. And if you have your own business, often if it's your true passion, this is the 5th house is also it. You raise it like your baby, because the 5th house is your babies, your children. And Venus going retrograde in your 1st house, which is you, ruling the 5th house, is a strong indication that some of you might restart something they're passionate about, some hobby from the past, or revisit a love affair, an old love affair, to reevaluate it, maybe to get like and especially because in light of the way they're trying to transform themselves in the 1st house, to see themselves in a better light, to feel more love towards themselves, so revisiting some love affair, or create something that makes you really feel alive, like a creative hobby or something you're very passionate about, or some creative project can come back to you. Or you might realize that you're dissatisfied with how your creative life, how little creative life you have, and how little joy and fun and childlike self-expression you have in your life while Venus turns retrograde, then try to integrate it, try to go back to it, to find that little child in you. And that will make you look younger, more beautiful in the long term, more attractive. If it's your sun in Gemini, Venus going retrograde, they're revisiting those old passions that have slumbered or restarting them. Something that you haven't done in months or sometimes years, restarting them can basically recharge you, because the sun is your drive for success, for your goals, for vision for the future. It can, and creativity, it can recharge that for you. Your vitality can be recharged and you would look more attractive to others overall. But remember that Venus retrograde can also indicate some crisis, and Venus is naturally relationships. Venus is rethinking money because it rules finances, thinking a lot and having to fix or correct matters and connects to relationships, to money. And usually it can start with some crisis and maybe reevaluating, is this the right resources? Is this the right source of relationships that I want? And so on. And Saturn goes retrograde as well in your 9th house in May, sometime in the middle. And when Saturn goes direct in the 9th house, this is the first time in 30 years, retrograde, the first time in 30 years that is going retrograde in your 9th house. So that will be a lot about questioning your reality. The 9th house is, like Bryan says, your cosmology, what you believe. Reality is what your belief system, how you perceive the world. And they say, if you change your belief systems, you change your reality. If you believe the universe is a scarce one, scarce resources, this is how you're gonna act. You're gonna act in competitive way towards people, that there is not enough. And of course, you're gonna have a lot less manifestation of financial stability. Just giving an example, but if you believe the universe is an abundant place where there is enough for everyone, you'll collaborate with others. You'll be way more generous, and more abundance will flow to you. So currently in May, it's starting a process that will carry on for about 2.5 years for you, Geminis, that will basically restructure your belief systems. And as I said, once the belief systems are restructured, in about 2.5 years after that, when Saturn moves into your 10th house, the material reality of your life will also change due to those deep questioning. Saturn is a deep planet. It questions deep. It gets dissatisfied first. Some of you might start feeling like, even like I'm dissatisfied with astrology. If this is your world vision, it's not enough. I need to find something deeper. Or why didn't astrology predict the coronavirus? It did. We did. But, or it might be like I'm starting to question the reality of what I believe. Do I believe the government, or do I believe that we're being really watched over by benevolent God or benevolent reality? Some of you, it's like the Saturn starts retrograde in the 9th house with some dissatisfaction about your reality, about your beliefs. And the process is very long. It will continue 2.5 years gradually, but the first retrograde is usually so intense. And it might start the process of some disillusionment. Because when you lose something you've believed your whole life, it's like you lose meaning. You can, sometimes people feel like existential sadness when this happens. I'm not going to say depression or anything. Saturn is making trine to your sign, guys. So it's a supportive aspect. Usually people can do something lastingly when Saturn makes trine to your sun in Gemini or moon or ascendant, something that has long productive results. But internally there is this spiritual quest that starts for you, this philosophical quest. There's often a return to all the beliefs to be re-examined and revived, but in a higher way, with a deeper understanding. Maybe the beliefs of your ancestors, of your country. Maybe if you were born Christian but you became Buddhist and you've got a high perspective, and now Saturn goes retrograde in your 9th house, you might start going back to re-examine the more ancient Christianity and such matters. But on a more material level, this can indicate Saturn going retrograde in your 9th house, that you are starting to question where you want that ultimate goal for you to be, that ultimate something that you meaning that makes you wake up in the morning. And this can indicate you changing your deciding, for example, that you want to pre-qualify and changing course of studies, moving from one university to another. There might be a tangible blockage for you to access certain level of studies or educations, or it might be either disappointment or a blockage. Maybe you get disappointed with a professor or a teacher or a field that you're studying, and you start deciding to pre-qualify. And again, it might be a process that lasts for 2-3 years ahead. So don't think you have to all do it this summer while Saturn is retrograde, but it's this gradual process of that. Some of you might want to really deepen some knowledge they have and go back to studying something they left. Maybe you started studying astrology a few months or years ago, and now your interest comes back when Saturn goes retrograde, but way more deep and way more focused. And it might be about any kind of studies, not just astrology. You can question the reality, as I said. You can have some existential questioning, blah, blah, blah. Okay. It's also 9th house is travel. So, okay, retrograde means to do something that was that you couldn't do. Maybe some travel can come back, but especially connected to work, connected to some practical thing that you have to do when you're traveling. You can redo it, restart it. But generally, when Saturn goes retrograde in the 9th house, there can be some kind of blockage, and possibly that's, possibly the blockages for long-term distance traveling will continue throughout the world in the summer as well, and in the next 2 years almost. And that will affect Gemini strongly. They'll be strongly aware of that. Saturn can limit that outside mobility to travel all over the place, but it internalizes, especially when it goes retrograde, into a deeper philosophy, to find deep questions, to go explore spiritually, almost to go explore within, So, okay, so also that can indicate that if you're trying to some legal matters or something connected to immigration or something, 9th house rules legal matters, immigration, traveling, import, export. Saturn retrograde can mean that you require 3 times more effort, something that you've missed. There might be some delays or something that you've missed filling in. You become aware of it, you have to fix it. So all such matters can have a little bit of this Saturnian tinge that requires more efforts, more perseverance, re-examining the strategy, correcting something. And then Jupiter goes retrograde in your 8th house. And that happens once every 12 years only. So I think that will be that deepening that Bryan was talking about. There's like a deepening about the healing processes of the 8th house that are happening. It's very psychological. But now Saturn is no longer there in your 8th house. The South Node is almost leaving in May. So I think you might experience an internal rebirth, an internal renewal psychologically and emotionally from some trauma. And it's not going to be so much outward that others see it, but it's going to be like you finally integrate the lessons of the positive that came out of this trauma, of these turbulent times that Bryan talked about, and you internalize the really positive lesson. Jupiter is about that, finding the meaning in it and finding peace with it and finding deep spiritual connection to it. And another thing on a more material level is that if you are expecting money from someone else, maybe your partner's resources were limited, well, for a bit, or it can come back to you. Maybe your partner expected something, maybe you expected money from someone that needs to, but it was put on hold, but it was, for example, something to get returned to you that is from another person, or tax returns, 8th house rules taxes. Jupiter going retrograde there, you can receive like tax returns, but also requires that you put more effort in 8th house matters. That for the next 2-3 months, you might be putting more efforts in doing your taxes, your wills, your insurances of some sort. 3 times more efforts, but 3 times more better lasting results if you do what's required. It can also indicate that you're, okay, I'm not it's gonna go too long. It is deeper sexuality as well, as Bryan was talking about, and maybe trying to explore alternative methods of sexuality and of bonding on a more intense level, maybe tantric, maybe more spiritual. It can go in certain, and it doesn't need to be so spiritual as well. It can be just you questioning the deep emotional bonds that you have, especially the intimate ones, and how you give and receive. But it's gonna feel more like you're receiving revelations, that having to struggle with those things, because it's not Saturn retrograde day, it's Jupiter. It gives you revelation, so to speak, about such hard topics: sex, taxes, death. So yeah, Jupiter going retrograde in your 8th house will also ask you to re-examine your mutual finances and resources with your partner, but from a perspective of more abundance, because that's the ultimate goal of Jupiter. To question, is this the right way? Where am I investing my money? 8th house is where you invest. 8th house is also where you put your money together with others, your resources, your values as well. So you might start rebudgeting or asking such questions, thinking of a different strategy about your business, if you have business with partners, and the financial side of it, or with your personal finances with a partner, marriage or business partner of any sort. But hopefully re-examining them from a perspective of more opportunities, perspective that more is likely to and possible. And yeah, I guess basically it's reintegration of trauma, of the traumatic things that have happened for us in the past few months and for you in the past few years, like really understanding the deep spiritual lessons of that with this Jupiter retrograde, and healing to the deepest level now, one last time. This roller coaster of emotions that you've been going through, that basically robbed you of your innocence and superficiality. Sorry to say, Gemini. You know it, you have this flighty side. I love it. But yeah, you're no longer the innocent butterfly you once were. So anyway, thank you so much, Bryan.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
Joining us, and I look forward to your next month videos for May, to hopefully together again, where you talk about the new evolutionary lessons for a Gemini with the nodes moving in their sign and the opposite sign. And if you'd like to learn the art that Bryan teaches of karmic astrology, past lifetimes, how to see the past lifetimes from the horoscope with the nodes, join him on the 16th of May for just $63, down from $90, a webinar of 4 hours on that topic. I look forward to it. I can't wait to find out more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Geminis.